right, so this week I'm supposed to talk about the Feast of Trumpets, but as I studied that, and I started thinking more, and we had 3 memorial services, Friday, Monday, and Wednesday, I realized there are a lot of things bubbling up in these awesome services that were really rich for me, and I didn't want to ignore that. So this week we're going to talk about joy and suffering, because that is important. And everybody, I realized the minute I asked the question, what do you guys think about suffering or sadness? That was easy. Everybody has a lot inside that they can share about that. So on Thursday night, we came together with our group, the Epic service, and we had 15 or so people. And when we were around the whiteboard, we decided to talk about joy and suffering. And again, content just blowing me away. We had so many notes about joy and suffering. It made me realize that this isn't something I have to try to relate with you on. You've already experienced it, and you're navigating through it. But I get to talk about it today, and I want to share some of the observations from our experience. But before I do that. So, just 1 year ago, me and my family were over at the Humane Shelter, and we were looking at dogs. We do that every once in a while. It's just a fun thing to do, not actually to get one. So we were there, and we said, I don't know, let's just play with one for a little bit. So we brought one of them into the room. Her name was Issy. So we brought her in, and she was so shy, so nervous, that she just stayed under a chair by my feet the entire time. She would not play. She wouldn't do anything. And it was kind of like, I can expect there's something pretty bad that's happened in that little dog's life. Maybe she was in a dog hoarding situation, because in those situations, usually they just throw a pile of food and whoever's strongest gets most of it. Well, she must have been strongest because she was chubby already. Quite chubby. So, but we knew that, and I'm guessing some big dogs might have hurt her when she was little, because she's super scared of big dogs, just terrified. So we go home, we told the girls, obviously we're not getting one. And they cried, and then we're getting kind of emotional about it, because, you spend a little time with a puppy, and in that particular situation, you think, oh man, there's something we could do about that. So we got home, and as we were getting out of the car, Christy and I just looked at each other, and we knew we were headed back. So we headed back, we got Issy, and they changed her name, the girls changed her name to Honey. And Honey is just the sweetest dog. She, again, would not play. She wouldn't do anything. She just sat there, and if you gave her a bone, she'd chew on it for 20 hours a day. So she'd go through these big bones, and she's just a 15-pound dog. Like a whole bone in probably 2 hours, because that's all she learned to do. She didn't want to play or anything. But over the last year, Honey's become just the sweetest, most trusting thing for us. And we love her, and she's learned to trust us. And that's been really cool. The girls love her so much. She sometimes sleeps at the end of their bed. She's just a great dog. But I tell that because we all know what it's like to go through a situation like that. I mean, maybe you have adopted a Humane Shelter pet, so you know what it's like when you bring something or someone who just isn't trusting. Maybe he's been alone or been hurt or wounded. And you all know what it's like to feel alone, too, and how scary that can be. I'm getting a ring up here, so we all know that. And what that reminded me of is an actual scripture in 1 Corinthians. So if you want to turn with me, it's 1 Corinthians 12, 24 through 26. I'll give you just a few seconds. So 1 Corinthians 12, 24 through 26. If you're wondering why we don't have slides, that is because Mark took his laptop to California. And my laptop is in the repair shop for the last month. So that is why we don't have slides. So 1 Corinthians 12:24 says, "So God has put the body together, such that extra honor and care are given to those parts that have less dignity." And I'm reading from the New Living Translation. This makes for harmony among the members, so that all the members care for each other. If one part suffers, all the parts suffer with it. And if one part is honored, all the parts are glad. I believe that was probably a radical statement to say that if one part has less dignity, we're going to give more care to it. Because reading some of the historical context of the world just at that point in time, when someone had less dignity, it usually meant that they didn't have much to offer to the community, whether it was money or talent or what it may be. It could have been a widow, a widower, someone who was homeless, someone who had an ailment or something that was permanent. But this is radical. Offer extra care to the one with less dignity. And I love that because we know that about our own bodies, right? If part of our body is hurt, we're going to offer extra care to it. So that was part of the gospel message, was that in our communities, if there are people there with less dignity, if there are people there who are in need, it is our job to spend extra time to love them even deeper, to honor them. And I love that. And when we were talking on Thursday, there were a few observations. So I wanted to go through some of them, which actually ended up being a great list of joy and suffering. What is joy? We asked that question. And being in the church for most of my life, I know that I've heard joy is deeper than just a feeling. But what does that actually mean? You know, I think of songs like, Oh, Tidings of Comfort and Joy. When I was a kid, that usually was like comfort and happiness, you know, like a feeling. But what does joy actually mean? Is it deeper than that? So here are some of the observations from my conversations with people on Thursday night. Cindy Manti said something that ends up being the corner piece of this entire talk. She said, staying open to love around us will eventually bring comfort and joy. And I'll be explaining that a lot more. I have my own personal stories about that. I'm going to share in a little bit, and I'll say it again. Staying open to love around us will bring us comfort and joy. And here's some of the things that Scott Nelson shared. And he started this little bit. I'm going to share a little of it, and then people just started, yeah, this. Scott said, joy is an accumulated awareness. Joy is an accumulated awareness. Joy is an accumulated awakening is another word he used for it. I think that's so right. It's not a feeling. It's something that accumulates over time. And what else came from that? Joy is an accumulated wisdom. Joy is an accumulated experience. I'm 37. Many of you have lived longer than me, and you have experienced. You have gone through suffering. You've learned to navigate and to find joy. The people I've met in here have learned to be emboldened and not embittered. And when Cindy shared with me to stay open to the love around us, coming from Cindy, that means a whole heck of a lot. That family's been through a lot. And I know that Cindy is not there. That is amazing. Joy is an accumulated gift. Joy is an accumulated skill. And we could go on and on. But then, what is suffering? What is it for? And we made a list. Suffering reminds us to appreciate the small things. Boy, that was one of those things you figure out when someone close to you dies. When I was in Washington, D.C., we lost someone very young. He was part of one of my volunteer teams. He was in one of my small groups. He was very young. He was only in his 40s. We lost him, and it was very traumatic. And I remember when it happened on a Saturday morning, it was Valentine's Day. And I had to go to the scene with the lead pastor. And I remember how little everything else mattered. Except for the big things, family, friends, people. All that little stuff, being busy and thinking I need to get my to-do list done, all that, it just doesn't matter anymore. So what does suffering do? It reminds us to appreciate the small things. And I'm realizing as we do messages each week, messages aren't teaching us brand new things you've never heard before. So I recognize that. They're just reminders. And maybe every once in a while God puts something there like, oh, I never thought about it that way. But I'm going to just share reminders with you today. Here's another one. Suffering teaches us to listen. Suffering compels us to pause, to grieve, and to be intentional. You've all watched the movies, or you maybe have yourself gone through an experience where maybe it was a sudden death, or not sudden death, but a near-death experience. And you realize, oh my word, like, I need to be more intentional because this could be my last day. And then we sit and share amongst each other with the memorial services, and they're so powerful. It's just such an incredible experience. Shirley Benell's memorial service, there's so much family here. So many people, and they're all sitting in this section. And then my favorite part was taking the microphone. Holly went around and asked them questions, or not asked them questions, but let them share. And there were so many people that shared, and you could see how important family was to Shirley, and how much of an impact she had made on the lives of her family, and eventually me. I was so moved by that. It was heaven on earth, and I told them, this is heaven on earth. These memories, what you've shared together. And that's what suffering does. It causes us to be more intentional, to remember, to listen. And it's not easy to pause, especially living in America. Living in society where we're like, oh, gotta get stuff done, no time to be sad. But we know that that's not healthy. We have to be willing to pause and embrace sadness. The Bishop Desmond Tutu, who's written a lot of books, very profound leader over the years. He said that joy can only be experienced in its fullness when you're willing to embrace suffering as well. And that's what allows you to be emboldened and not embittered. Something like that. I think that's so important. And so, as we're talking about suffering and what it reminds us of and how it allows us to pause and listen, that's still not natural. We don't always do that. Right? We definitely don't always do that. So, the caveat to that entire suffering thing is we have to stay open to the love around us. To be able to experience joy and comfort. Those things don't happen naturally. Christy told me this story, which I kind of knew a little bit about it. I knew that sunflowers, they're called sunflowers, where they literally follow the sun through the sky. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Scientifically, it's considered a circadian rhythm that sunflowers have. They literally, from the east to the west, their faces follow the sun. I think that's pretty cool. Something interesting that happens that they've found is when sunflowers mature and the stems get hard, they face the east and they never move. They stop following the sun because they don't need to. But they know when they're facing the east, that's where they're going to find the most warmth. And bees love warmth. Pollinate mature sunflowers that way. And then there's another theory that when it's cloudy, occasionally the younger growing sunflowers will turn and face the mature ones. And I thought, what? If that's not God working through nature, I don't know what is. The younger growing sunflowers face the mature sunflowers to find warmth. That's incredible. I love that. And so when I heard that, I thought, oh my word. Like, how powerful is that? I know that I've had to do that in my life. I know that as I'm more mature. When I came to Pilgrim Congregational, this was 2 years ago, and I thought I was doing pretty well. I thought I was growing. Internally, things were, I'm holding it together, doing well. And after a few months, I realized that I had brought a lot of wounds and a lot of past experiences with me that I hadn't actually healed through, even though I thought I did. See, when Cindy talked about being open to love around this, I was actually closed, but I did a really good job of pretending I was open. I've been good at pretending all my life, since I was a little kid. You find ways to get by. But after a little while, one person would not stop turning his face toward me. And it was Ryan Beatty. And it was irritating. and he kept digging into my life and asking me questions and asking me how I was doing. And I just thought, leave me alone. Like, I don't really want to make any more friends right now. Which is so weird. I didn't even know I felt that way. So I had to ask myself, like, why don't I want to be friends? Why don't I want to be open to Ryan? And Ryan just kept facing me. And after, it was probably 2 or 3 months of him doing that, I finally opened up because I realized how closed I was. That experience with losing my friend, how the church handled it in DC. Other experiences had really wounded me, and I wasn't willing to admit it. Because sometimes we don't even know we're suffering. America, get yourself up by your bootstraps, huh? Let's make it happen. Sometimes we just keep walking as if everything's okay because we don't want to show how vulnerable we really are. So Ryan faces me. And I finally, at one point, just said, okay, Ryan. I let him know. I said, you know what, I didn't realize it, but I've been holding back. I'm not wanting to open up to anybody. And you're making me. But how did he do that? Because he's a mature sunflower facing the east. Because he's experienced suffering. Because he knows what it's like to navigate through it and find comfort and joy. So, looking at this room, maybe you are that mature sunflower facing the east. Maybe you're still searching. But I know that you can turn. You can open up to the love around you. And I need to constantly do it. This isn't like, okay, finally I did that, now I'm open. No, it's not natural. We want to close, just like sunflowers do at night. We want to just close up. But we don't know that it's the night in our lives. So I just ask you to be willing to stay strong. Stand strong because you might be that person that needs to turn your face toward the younger one. Or you might be that person who just needs to find the warmth from the love around you, because it is around us. And where is it? It's in the people that God has placed in our lives. A sunflower never wonders if it has enough dignity to face the sun. It just does. It's just part of its nature. It's its existence to face the sun. So I ask you to stay open to the love around you. This is where you will find comfort and joy. And don't we all want that? Isn't that what pilgrims are? and joy, but only when we are willing to stay open, only when we are willing to turn our faces to you. I know it doesn't come naturally for me. But I thank you, God, that when we stay open, you will eventually bring us comfort and joy, whether you do it through people, through nature, through countless other ways that you present yourself. And as we take the Lord's Supper today, I just thank you for the suffering that you allowed your Son to endure. Because in that we can see that you've been where we've been, and so much further. Help us take solace in that. Thank you for bringing us comfort and joy through your suffering. In your heavenly name.